كثير من الناس فمن اتقى الشبهات فقد استبرأ لدينه وعرضه ومن وقع في الشبهات وقع في الحرام كالراعي يرعى حول الحمى يوشك أن يرتع فيه ألا وإن لكل ملك حمى ألا وإن حمى الله محارمه ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسدت الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب رواه مسلم وبخاري. On this hadith narrated to us by Abdullah ibn Nu'man ibn Bashir, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that the halal is clear and the haram is clear, and between them are matters unclear that are unknown to most people. Whoever is wary of these unclear matters has absolved his religion and honor, and whoever indulges in them has indulged in the haram. It is like a shepherd who herds his sheep too close to the preserved sanctuary, and they will eventually graze in it. Every king has a sanctuary, and the sanctuary of Allah is what He has made haram. There lies within the body a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound, and if it is corrupted, the whole body is corrupted. Verily, this piece is the heart. Narrated by Bukhari Muslim. This hadith is a very important hadith because some scholars say it is a quarter of Islam. In the sense that Imam Abu Dawood, he says that it gives the guidance to your lives. And it deals with shubuhat. As you know, the religion could be destroyed by two things. Shubuhat, which are doubts, and shahawat, which are desires. And so many of the scholars also began the book of Buyu' with this hadith, the book of transactions, business transaction with this hadith, including Abu Yusuf himself. Abu Yusuf, who was a student of Abu Hanifa, his students asked him, write us a book about zuhud. So he says, I already wrote for you a book about buyu', about transactions. Because many of us think that zuhud is perhaps, we have a certain image in our mind of someone who leaves off the dunya and lives as poorly and as simply as possible. Well, that may be true, but the essential part of zuhud is to leave off the doubtful matters. That is the essential part of zuhud, and that is why they included this in the book of transactions, particularly business transactions, because a lot of doubtful matters comes into, and you see one of the most famous asked questions today is, Sheikh, the mortgage, is it halal or haram? This is one of the still. What is halal, what is haram when it comes to food and eating? These are still the arena of doubtful matters. And when the Prophet ﷺ is saying halal is clear and haram is clear, there are categories that make things doubtful. For example, we have Imam Shawkani, he put 6 matters that creates doubtful matters. He says one is that the evidences could not be reconciled between two. Meaning there's evidence on this side, evidence on this side. I'll give you an example. When you make ruku' and you stand up from ruku' and then you go back to, and you go down to sujood, there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says, don't go down like the camel. Now, many scholars differed. What does that mean? Does a camel go with his legs first, or does it go with his hands first? That's why you have some people go down with their knees first, and then to their hands, and some people go with their hands first. This becomes one of those matters that creates this ambiguity in the matter. Another thing Imam Shawkani says is that something that could lead to haram. It is not haram in and of itself, but it may lead to haram. For example, you are hanging out with some friends. Every time you hang out with them, they lead you to backbiting and gossiping and so forth. This becomes a matter where you could absolve from. Remove yourself from this because you know what it leads to. In and of itself, it's not haram, but it becomes a doubtful matter. So what happens is because you're a person who pays attention to his iman, and you're paying attention to the direction of where your iman goes, you stay away from this doubtful matter. And also something that the Sharia said is makruh. Another thing is something that based on the circumstance, the ruling can change. So for example, if you know that taking a particular medicine that has alcohol in it, but it is probably something that will help you, but at the same time, you can do without, maybe you take a medicine that's less effective, right? Then that becomes something that you can be zahid in. You can say to yourself, for the sake of Allah, I'm going to take the one that may be less effective is because it doesn't have alcohol in it. So you have this discretion within your iman, your individuality, and your religiosity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's other things with regards to things that the Sharia made haram based on weak ahadith. So for example, there's a lot of weak ahadith with regards to beef being harmful, the eating of beef, but most of them are weak hadith. And so if you decide from your zuhud that you're going to leave off this as part of your doubtful matter, because it could be true, could be not, then that is upon your discretion. The main essential thing is that the Sharia came to anything that was beneficial and good is halal. And there are ayats in the Quran, ayat muhkamat. There are verses that are clear, that we establish foundational principles upon them. And then there are doubtful matters that only the scholars are familiar with, right? And so you don't want to get into the arena of the doubtful, because the example given here is like the one who grazes around a sanctuary that doesn't belong to him. And we have to understand this in terms of ghira. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protective jealousy. And the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is jealous about is coming next to the things that He made haram. You know, a man is supposed to have ghira with his women, folks. The Prophet ﷺ himself had ghira. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ghira is that you come next to the things that He made haram. Shaitan tempts you to do these things, to have you go, just going around the borderlines. And that is dangerous for your heart. And that is why the second part of this hadith is talking about the heart. It's saying that the most important part of your body is the spiritual heart. If you're always going around doubtful matters, if you're always going around the borderlines, you don't want to secure yourself, you don't want to back up, you're going to endanger the darkness of the heart, enveloping your heart. And the Prophet ﷺ in another hadith, he says that لا يستقيم إيمان أحدكم, that the iman of one of you will never be straight. لا يستقيم إيمان أحدكم حتى يستقيم قلبه. The iman of any one of you will never be straight until his heart is straight. And then he says ولا يستقيم قلبه حتى يستقيم لسانه. And he will never be able to keep his heart firm, because that's what we want, istiqama, right? A man came to the Prophet ﷺ, he says, tell me some advice. He says, قُلْ آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say, I believe in Allah, then be straight. Straight meaning what? Umar radiallahu anhu said, don't be foxy in your religion. You know, some people, because of the desire of money, because of the desire of certain things in this dunya, they cheat around and they misguide themselves and they manipulate and they deceive themselves into thinking, okay, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that, and delving around these doubtful matters, knowing very well that in order to protect themselves, they must back up and back up a good amount, right? And we talked about this before when I said, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ, the one who whispers in the chest of men, don't bring him close to your heart. Because the closer he is, the more chances he'll get in. And when he gets in, he controls you. So what does the Prophet ﷺ mean when he says, the iman of one of you will never be straight until his heart is straight, and his heart won't be straight until his tongue is straight? Because the tongue is the final indication of what's in the heart. And in the hadith of Tirmidhi, when the man came and got this advice from Rasulullah ﷺ, he says, what do you advise me with? He says, and he held his tongue. He says, watch this. The backbiting, the gossiping, the things that you may think are vain talk, right? What they do is they weaken the heart. And if the heart is weakened, you'll never be able to be straight. You always delve in the doubtful matters. There's things that were doubtful at once upon a time, and now they became haram. Because eventually, over time, if science and our research finds that things are harmful for us, they become haram automatically. So for example, there was once upon a time where cigarettes was makruh. It was something doubtful, harmful but not proven yet. Until recently in our times, they said cigarettes is harmful, cause lung cancer, attributed to many other diseases. And so now it becomes hard for the person who delved in those doubtful matters to leave off that which is now haram. And that is why you have to give yourself a buffer zone. There must be a buffer between you and the haram things. You can't engage in every doubtful matter, right? Even if it be for your benefit. Sometimes people are saying, well, you know, there's nothing proven that I can't engage in a particular business venture. You know, people are always coming up with new ideas, whether it be maybe crypto and all of these new ventures that we have today, right? And people haven't, the Islamic world hasn't fully researched these things. They're still in debate. They're in the fiqh councils. They're in conferences where people are researching. The scholars are putting together their minds, looking at their sharia tools and evaluating these things. But meanwhile, you have no problem in engaging until you find it that it is haram. But if you see that, if somebody says to you, a trustworthy person, a sheikh that you follow, that this is a doubtful matter, we're looking into it, that doesn't mean you have the green light if you desire for your heart to be protected. And that is the whole point here. If you're a person who doesn't really care, then go ahead, do as you wish. We talked about in one hadith, if you have no shame, do what you wish, right? But if you are someone who guards the heart and is keen about protecting it, then you will be very careful about the things that cause it to waver or to leave the sirat al-mustaqim, right? Because this is, being on the sirat, being on the straight path, is to follow the things that are clear. And the more you do that, the more your iman increases and the more power you have to leave off that which may be even wasting time. Because Sharia has different categories. We have what's fard and wajib, what's obligatory, you get rewarded for doing it, and you get punished for leaving it. We have mustahab, things that are rewarded, but you don't get punished for leaving it. You have the mubah, the things that you don't get rewarded for, they're neutral things. Then you have the makruh, the things that will, if you engage in them frequently, they could involve into sin and they could lead you down the path. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always gives us the advice. It's not that He wants you to stop away from the haram only. He always says, don't follow the footsteps of that thing that will lead to the haram. لا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't follow the footsteps of shaitan. لا تقربوا الزنا. Don't come close to zina. Right? Don't even put yourself in a position where you could be tempted. Right? All these things are safeguarding our religion. And this is from the etiquettes of the Muslim, that he, you know, he's paying attention. You know, if you have a son and he's playing in the streets, and maybe the part where he's playing is safe, but there's a danger that he may end up in the dangerous part, right, where he gets hit by a car or what have you. So now as a parent, you're safeguarding your children. You're saying, don't even come close to there. If he's in the beach somewhere, you don't want him to go too far off. You want him to stay by the shore because you're afraid that a wave might come and take him and kill him. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more merciful on us than our own parents. So when He legislates this border, it says, and He keeps saying, لا تقربوها, don't come close to it. لا تعتدوا, don't go further and don't transgress in these limits that I've set for you. Then it is up to us to safeguard our heart. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in talking about the hearts, He mentioned to us in the hadith that every sin that the son of Adam does, it's like a black dot. And slowly it tints the heart, it covers it. As it becomes darker and darker, it's harder for iman to enter it. And when you're blocking your iman, you're not able to flourish, you're not able to work. You know, it's almost as if someone has an handicap over you. Because iman is what gives the mu'minun the rush, right? They give them that life. And that is why أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ, that only from the zikr of Allah, and this is for the believers. I want you to pay attention. The disbelievers, it doesn't matter to them, right? But for the believers, believing and doing good deeds and staying away from the haram is what gives you motivation and energy to carry on. And if you feel yourself low in energy, low in ability and motivation to do good deeds, it's because you haven't worked on your iman. You haven't put in enough good deeds, right? So it's very important that you realize you're different from the disbelievers, in the sense where your energy comes from the worship of Allah and the guarding of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made haram. And so we understand that the most important part of our body is the heart. And our tongue will be a display of what's in the heart. Perfect your good outwardly deeds, you'll see that it's also going to be like a cycle. The heart will be rejuvenated, and the heart must always never blink. Because Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he was talking about istiqamah, he says it is that the heart is always fixated on Allah. It's called a station called al-yaqada. Al-yaqada is the opposite of ghafla. It's the opposite of being heedfulness. That always your heart is awake. And sometimes the day can be over, but the heart is working. The heart is worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even in its sleep, right? It's never taking its eyes off the main target, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why you see the difference between Abu Bakr and all of the Muslims, for example. They had the same 24 hours, right? They had the same amount of time, but their heart was always working, always working. Always working for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is, Ibn Mas'ud, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala نَذَرَ إِلَى قُلُوبِ الْعِبَادِ. He looked at the hearts of the slaves. وَوَجَدَ خَيْرَ قَلْبٍ قَلْبِ مُحَمَّدٍ صلى الله عليه وسلم. And he found that the heart of Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم was the best heart, right? Because it was the heart that was keen on doing the good deeds for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and staying away from the haram. And this point of making your heart steadfast is a very hard matter. In fact, in Surah Hud and Yunus, the verses came down that they said, "Shayabatni Hudun wa Yunus." The Prophet ﷺ, he says, "My hair is gray because of the verses that came in Surah Hud and Yunus." Which verses were they? The verses that told the Prophet ﷺ, "Istaqim kama umirt." Be steadfast like you were commanded. That verse gave him gray hair. Because, as you know, every day is a battle, right? In your spiritual survival. Every day you have to face temptations. You say to yourself, you make the azima, you say, today I'm going to be like the Prophet ﷺ. I'm going to do everything he did. And then all of a sudden the day starts and all hell breaks loose, right? You got somebody complaining to you, one of the family members, you don't know how to react to that. Then you have some issues, maybe some fitan that you're exposed to, you don't know how to react to that. So many things that are coming to you, right? And to maintain that istiqamah is not easy. It's not easy. And that is why one of the most du'as you make is ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us onto the straight path. And istiqamah doesn't mean be straight. When he says, قُلْ أَمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ, it doesn't mean say I believe in Allah and be straight. It means stay straight. Stay straight. That despite all of the things that come at you, maintain that what we call ihsan. Maintain that level of excellence in your worship, in your iman. And that is how, and one of the ways to do it is staying away from the doubtful matters. Be safe from your religion. And we talked about this in last week with regards to innovation in the religion. You may say to yourself, well, the scholars of the past, some of them did this, some of them approved this, and the people of my town are doing this. But if I told you it was a doubtful matter, now what is your decision? Now I will say to myself, to safeguard myself and my family, I will stay away from the things that may be doubtful, that may be controversial, in order to find that clarity, in order to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I do care about my iman, and I do care about my survival, my spiritual survival. And that is pretty much what the Prophet ﷺ is saying, that there's a piece of flesh in the body. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. That's why Allah says, إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهِ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Except everybody is not going to be beneficial to you on the Day of Judgment. No money, no wealth, except that you have a qalbun salim. And we said salim is not one time. It's salim all the time. So that when the angel of death comes, you are radi mardiya. You have a soul that is tranquil and ready. And you have submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that anything that Allah judges or legislates, you have nothing in your heart about it. You're completely satisfied with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for you. You're content, whether it be with your family, whether it be your money, whatever it is, you're happy with it. Because all your life you've done what you could to stay away from the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like you to be around. And that's from the ghira of Allah. You have that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you let that love and you let that passion steer you that straight path. The sirat al-mustaqim. Subhanallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. If there's any questions or comments, we can take them now, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Hadith is clear, right? Al-halal bayin. Yeah, that's it, alhamdulillah. But like I said, what makes people chase after the doubtful matters is the disease in their hearts. When you have a disease in your heart, meaning you've been sinning too much without tawbah, all of a sudden everything, you justify everything. You go into a business that people tell you there's some shubuhat here, but you don't care. You go in because you want the money. You let a desire for money delude your clarity, right? You have a particular profession that they say to you, there's a lot of haram involved here. But you say to yourself, I need the rizq. So you go into it. When you know that the rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once upon a time, you had that strong iman. You said to yourself, I would never do this. But all of a sudden, over time, after sinning repeatedly and then not making tawbah, you all of a sudden now think it's okay. So what happened? What changed? The halal and haram didn't change. Your heart changed. So pay attention to your heart every day. Because at any point in time, it could flip. And you don't have control over it. And you could find yourself doing things you didn't imagine you would do. We know people like that. We know people who are very religious, and all of a sudden, they don't want to hear anything about religion anymore. Over time, they didn't pay attention to the heart. They will only focus on the exterior, what the people will see, what the people will know about me. And they didn't care in seclusion to work on the relationship between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not all for show. You know, everybody's not going to always be around you. One day you'll be by yourself. Right? Farda, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says by yourself, singular. One day you'll be in the grave, there will be dark, there's to be no one with you. Your family will bury you and then they'll leave. Are we prepared for that time, that seclusion for Allah? Some people will, this is the first time we have seclusion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is in the grave. We never spent nights in prayer, we never spent days in seclusion, we never did anything privately with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so don't let that be the first time you're alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Work on the heart continuously, inshallah, and Allah will always give you what you work for. The sunnah of Allah. Tfaddal. Oh, yes, definitely. Zuhud has levels, right? And those who aspire to get to the higher level, they leave off even the things that are halal but have no benefit. And that's why Ali radiallahu anhu, he used to say, Kunu abna al-akhirah, be the children of the hereafter. You're always thinking hereafter, right? You're always thinking, okay, when I engage in a particular activity, is this getting me closer to Allah? Is this helping my akhirah? Or is this something, it's not going to bring me benefit in the akhirah, maybe even in the dunya? You know, like sitting down, wasting time. Sometimes it's necessary for just to reboost your energy. Maybe sit with some friends, talk about sports, you know, just to kind of give you, but have that time limited. Don't make that the big part of your day, you know. Just something to boost your energy again so you can get back into worship. And if you have the intention of getting close with friends for the sake of Allah, that's a different story. Yeah, because you always have to think of the intention. Remember I told you the intention is the business of the scholars. They used to create many hasanat just because of they can triple and double the intention of one action. So it's not like I'm wasting time. I'm actually getting closer to my Muslim brother, if he's Muslim, inshallah. And we're building a bond here. And that bond will serve us to maybe raise our children together, maybe one day build a community together. And all of this is in the back of your mind as a Muslim, as a believer. Then in that case, it's not wasting time. Definitely everything is by intention. We mentioned the first hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, right? What is your intention? You should always understand that your life is going to be compromised of the things you did. Meaning, the things you spend the most time on, that is what's going to summarize you at the end of the day. That's why people who want to say La ilaha illallah before they die, they're not going to be able to do that unless they live the life of La ilaha illallah. So if you are, as you know, your body has a haqq on you, right? Your family has a haqq on you. And so your soul has a haqq on you. And you know, all of these things, your family, your body, your soul, You have to be engaged in moderation. But if you desire and aspire to be like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you must do the things that he was involved in, you know. And sometimes in our American context, the culture is make sure you have fun, right? Make sure you have a lot of fun and then go back to work. But for him, his fun was salah. You know, like he says, the qurrat ayun, the coolness of my eye is salah. I find relief and relaxation in salah. So if you can get to that level, then you've definitely succeeded, you know. And so like with things that are mubah, I would say spend very little time. If there's benefit with regards to building bond between you and your son, for example, maybe you go fishing, you go to a sports game, because you're just trying to build that. There's a reason behind that action. It's not the action itself that I'm getting closer to my son or my friends and so forth. Then in that case, I think there is benefit in it. Allah knows best. Jazakumullah khair, inshallah. Barakallah feekum. May Allah reward all of you. Inshallah, we'll see you. I think they want to make the classes every 2 weeks, Sheikh. Every 2 weeks, Taha? Is that what do you guys think? What do you guys prefer? I think now that Maghrib is coming closer and closer, move it to Sunday. Is Sunday better for everybody? We'll get a poll. Maybe we could do a poll with the people, inshallah. I know with Isha usually being a little bit earlier, we might have to change after Isha. And then Thursdays, people usually fast, and then they go to break the fast. So inshallah, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, we'll let you guys know, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Any questions from the sisters or comments? Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallah feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.